Believe it or not, increasing your sales is not the only way to increase your income. This is Randy Kirk. You've reached Small Business Daily. And today we're going to continue our conversation with Craig Korotko. He is a business coach in the Inland Empire of Southern California and a personal friend. And Craig is going to talk about something that blew my mind the first time that I saw him present it. And that is the different ways that you can incrementally improve your business that will make a huge impact at the end of the year. So Craig, tell us generally what is the idea here?
Good morning, Randy, and it's great to be back. Enjoyed our session yesterday, and the topic that I want to talk about today is the power or the compound effect and the power of incremental growth in your company. As you said, a lot of times companies become paralyzed when they say, gosh, I need to grow my business and I need about 50% growth, but I don't know how I'm going to grow my sales 50%. But if I could show you how to make incremental changes within your company, maybe just 10% changes, small incremental changes, that would all compound on each other and bring you that benefit, that profitability of over 50%, would that be something you'd be interested in?
So absolutely. And of course, we're not in business to sell more. I mean, that's hard for a sales guy like me to admit, but it isn't all about selling more. We're in business to earn more. It's how much we bring home to the family. It's how much we're able to buy for our family and the amount of time that we're able to spend with them and take vacations. This is what really matters, as opposed to just generating more and more revenue at the top line. So Craig, take it away. What would be the beginning of this discussion on incremental improvement?
Well, the best way to illustrate this would be to let's look at a very simple question. If I were to offer you $1 million or a penny that doubles every day for the next 30 days, what would you instinctively want to take?
Generally speaking, I'd say, give me the $1 million now.
Yeah, cash in hand, you gotcha. But if I can show you that by doubling that penny, and there's a brief chart to say by doubling that penny, the first 10 days, you're up to $5.12. And then the next 10 days, you're up to $5,000. The people that took the $1 million are still sitting there going, I got $1 million, you only got 5,000. But watch what happens. By continuing that compound effect, by the time you get to the day 30, you're now up to $5 million in hand. And that's the same thing that happens within your business. By making incremental changes throughout your business, you can clearly build. So today I want to show you that looking at just 6 key areas in your business, just 6 key areas of, let's make some small changes to lead generation, to closing of sales, to the revenue stream, your customers, and if we can make just small incremental changes. And the best way, since we're working with numbers, I hate to do this, but let's throw up a quick chart that shows us what areas and what small incremental changes we're talking about. So let's take a look at a small business owner. Let's say this small business owner was a chiropractor. And through the course of his business, we'll take a baseline. He has 1,000 leads that he usually works with and a conversion rate of 25%. So he has a number of customers that he works with on an annual basis of 250 customers. Now, the number of transactions that he transacts with these customers is he shoots for a session a month, so a couple missed months. So he gets 10 transactions a year. Average sale of that transaction is $100. So he has total revenue of $250,000. Now, typically, a business owner will say, "Gosh, if I have $250,000 in revenue, that's pretty good." I hear a lot of business owners that say, "I've got $1 million. I must be successful." But then you have to layer in your operating costs, and you have the cost of goods sold. And we're just going to use percentages, so we're not diving real deeply into these percentages. But if you had 50% cost of goods sold in your overhead personnel, I should say, You have a gross profit of 125,000, still feeling pretty good. But now you have operating costs, your fixed costs, your building leases, et cetera. And again, for demonstration purposes, only 50%. So our chiropractor went home with $62,000 in net profit. Now, that's, if you understand how to keep your books and your financials, that's the piece that a lot of business owners don't understand. But that's also your opportunity for your revenue increases. So let's go back now and say, okay, small incremental changes. Let's make a 10% increase in your lead generation. So 10%, your next column here, that chiropractor's working with 1,100 leads. Small change in the conversion rate to just 27.5. You've now gone from 250 to 302 customers. That's a compound result of 21%. Now, number of transactions. Now, surely, if there's a number of ways to increase the transactions. You can have your frequent flyer programs. The more times you come back, maybe a small discount. So instead of 10 transactions a year, you do 11 transactions. And instead of an average sale of 100, do 110. Now your revenue goes from $250 to $365,000. Well, you're almost at 50% increase there without trying to figure out how you're going to increase sales by 50%. Cost of goods, you're going the other way. You're 10% more efficient in your cost of goods, so your cost of goods percentage goes down. And the same way with your operating costs. Check this out. Your net profit goes up to $110,000 and a 76% increase in what you were doing. Now, a lot of business owners would have even started down that path because they would have given up and self-sabotage themselves and say, there's no way I can increase revenue by 50%. So therefore, I'm just going to keep doing the same thing I've been doing all the time.
Yeah. So again, I've worked with over 300 clients counting Mastermind, I suppose it's now probably over 400 clients during the last 14 years. And the focus is always on revenue. It's not incrementalized like you just did. It's just like, how can we sell more?
Yep.
Should we put on a sale? Should we advertise more? But it's rare that you see a company that will take it and break it down the way that you just did and say, no, what we really need is 10% more leads, or what we need is 10% more add-ons to make the invoice higher.
Sure.
You said it in terms of visits from the chiropractor, but if it was retail or wholesale or manufacturing
transactions, yeah,
then you might have the same number of transactions, or you might have the same number of transactions where you're selling 10% more per transaction, or you might do both. You might have 10% more transactions with the same customer and get 10% more per transaction. So
exactly. And the best example of that, McDonald's does that so well. When you go in and buy a burger, they say, do you want fries with that? So they're adding to the transaction. Would you like to upsize that? Would you like to make that a large? And so that's how you can incrementally, instead of saying, well, gosh, I need to double the price of my sales. That doesn't mean you have to change the price. It just means how can you achieve that?
And of course, that's another element. So people sometimes are terribly afraid to raise their prices. But the truth is if you can increase the number of leads that you have, just by increasing the number of leads that you have a better chance of charging more.
Yes.
Because the volume of the leads coming in says, I'm going to still capture a certain percentage, even if my price is higher. Again, you may not want to do that. It's just one more quiver, one more arrow in your quiver
exactly
that you
right.
can use to increase the total of revenues. And then the other side of it, Craig, nobody wants to talk about the other side. Nobody wants to talk about cutting costs or cutting cost of goods.
No kidding.
So those are something I know I talk about it all the time, but my most recent book that Shayla and I wrote together, Shayla Chamberlain and I wrote together about making money out of thin air. A big piece of that is on the cost side, as opposed to on the income side, the revenue side.
And I really enjoyed that book because it spoke to my passions as you say, how can we drive more profit to the bottom line?
Right. And so if you have a situation where your company is buying incorrectly, I have a whole section on the website that talks about how do you buy better. You may be wanting to buy it direct from the manufacturer as opposed to through a wholesaler. You may even want to go overseas and buy direct from the actual manufacturer in China instead of a importer. You may want to just beat up the supplier that you have now and say, look, if you don't lower my price 5 or 10%, I'm going to take my business elsewhere. But there's a bunch of different ways you can lower cost of goods. That could be in labor, in lots of other ways.
Yep.
But that 5% incremental change, if you were able to average down 5% or 10%, is going to have just as much or more effect as raising the price or increasing the sales.
And continuing that thought, coming out of this pandemic, now is the perfect time to go back and look at renegotiating your lease. A lot of people just think that's a sunk fixed cost for, what is the term of your lease, 5-10 years. But people are struggling right now. There's a lot of empty space. It might be a good time to drive some of that cost down as well.
Right. And so that becomes the overhead piece.
Yep.
So the overhead piece, so you might get the cost of goods down by 5 or 10% by being a better buyer. You might get, and by really evaluating your labor, and you might get the actual overheads, the fixed overhead elements, like your insurance, like your rent, like some of your internet charges and whatnot. These are all negotiable, and it's always an appropriate time to go back and ask for a deal.
Absolutely.
So the kind of the bottom line on this then, Craig, is that these are incremental elements of the entire profit and loss, and that anywhere along that P&L and anywhere along those processes and procedures even, you could be looking for small changes that are going to have a dramatic effect at the other end because it all compounds.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. So instead of, torturing yourself trying to figure out how am I going to get this big number, either in sales, as you say, if you just look across your company and say, make a small change and start with, if 10% sounds difficult, start with 5%. But you start to see how it starts building and compounding on each other to drive that number and those profits down to the bottom line.
Yeah, and I think the last thing I want to talk about in this regard, just very quickly, is we're in an age where all businesses theoretically are really working on efficiencies. That can be robots, it can be AI, it can be computer programs. Can be better and faster computers.
Yep.
There's a range of ways that companies right now are really looking at becoming more efficient. My analysis right now is the companies that are not paying a huge close attention to becoming efficient across the board are going to be the losers in this decade, because the changes are coming at us quickly.
Exactly. And it's also a great way to continue to refresh your company, because if you're looking to make incremental small changes, instead of having to come in and retool your entire operation, you're in a much better position to survive as other companies are doing the same thing.
Yeah, so that would be another place, Craig, where you would coach folks. I know. I always introduce you as being the processes and procedures guy, but there's so much money to be made by streamlining processes and procedures.
Oh, absolutely. And a lot of that in our initial introduction, I was a chief information officer, and that was my entire job, was to find efficiencies and drive profits to the bottom line. And so you're always looking for ways to either automate or other ways to make processes more efficiency and find where those values and unlock value in the company. So it's.
Yeah, another one of a friend of both yours and mine, Nikki Pacheco, she works with HubSpot, and the CRM today is a huge procedural advantage if you're using a CRM appropriately. It helps with managing the sale. It helps with customer retention. There's so many aspects of a CRM today, just one example of where people are making a dramatic impact on what used to be maybe a category that didn't get a lot of attention because customer service is customer service.
Well, exactly right. And talk about locked value in your company. Everybody looks at increasing revenue by having to go out and find new leads. Well, what about tapping your existing customers and finding ways to bring more value there?
Or even my favorite gold mine, tapping old customers that have gone by the wayside.
Yep.
Prospects that said no 5 years ago, but there's a new buyer in town. So
yep.
I consider those to be the gold mines, and the CRM is a great place to
track those,
track those, and to give you a chance to get those pumped back up again.
No, absolutely right.
Well, Craig, it's been a great 2 days. I hope people will go back and look at yesterday where we talked about time management, because time management, let's face it, is something that almost every small business owner is interested in. Well, they may not really want to tackle it. I was going to say,
but the quote is, I don't have any time.
I don't have any time. I don't have time to improve my time management skills.
Exactly.
But anyway, hopefully people will go back and look at that. If you like the content today, please push the like button. Please subscribe if you like what we're doing on this channel, and then hit notify if you'd like to be notified of what we're going to talk about tomorrow. And quite frankly, it's going to be a surprise to me because I haven't decided what's on tomorrow's calendar. So come back tomorrow and you'll get more great content like today. Craig, thank you again for being on. And if folks need a coach, Craig is the guy to call.
Thank you again.
So this is Randy Kirk at Small Business Daily. See you tomorrow.